this email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or
The
news.
single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Paget.
Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Susan Scott, author of Fierce Conversations, Achieving Success at Work and in Life One Conversation at a Time, and Fierce Leadership, an alternative to the worst best practices of business today. We pick up with a conversation about mineral rights and radical transparency. You mentioned earlier, the way I wrote it was, you said the goals of the conversation are to interrogate reality, provoke learning, tackle tough issues, and enrich the relationship, which, by the way, I think is no small feat for a single conversation. And actually in the book, I guess that it falls under the mineral rights conversational model. Obviously, we don't want to get into the gory details, so they got to buy the book for that. But at a very high level, what is this mineral rights all about?
Well, this is a very different approach to coaching. By the way, I never have thought of myself as a coach. So I just don't. I'm just a friend. I'm a pal. I'm here for you. I don't think of myself as a coach.
Right.
I think of myself as a helper, maybe. But having had that experience that I mentioned earlier about the CEO who had withheld what was really happening until it was too late for us to help him turn things around, that sort of kicked off a series of insights. For one thing, if you tell somebody what you think they should do, I have an idea for you, or I've had this experience, let me tell you about what I did or what so-and-so did, it's very unlikely that they're going to embrace that and do that themselves. Self-generated insight is the most powerful force for action. And so this mineral rights, one of the participants in one of our very early workshops called it that, because she said, boy, if you're drilling, let's say you're drilling for water, you're going to have a lot more luck if you drill 1,000-foot well than 1,001-foot wells.
Right.
And I love that. And I think some of our conversations and meetings drill 1,001-foot wells, and we wonder, why didn't we make serious progress? We need to choose what is the most important thing we should be talking about. And let's go there. And so the mineral rights has 7 questions that you ask. And the secret rule is you do not make a declarative statement. You do not offer a suggestion. You do not say, and what if you did that? You just don't. You just ask, and what else, and what else, and what else. And sometimes I think there are 4 times in the conversation where you say, after someone has said, this is happening and this is what it is affecting. And you've asked, say more, what else is it affecting? Who else is it affecting? How is it affecting you? And they tell. And then you say, okay, when you think about everything you just said, what do you feel? And sometimes they'll say, well, I'm frustrated. Okay, talk about that frustration. And then they get deeper, because it's easy to say I'm frustrated. Everybody says I'm frustrated. That's not really enough. It's not rich enough. I want to go deeper. I want to get to the place where you're really, you might even be angry. You might be worried, sick, whatever it is, because again, I'm helping someone get in touch with their emotion around the topic, so that when we get to the part about, okay, what are you going to do? There is heat. There is serious heat. We've got gas in the beautiful car. We're going somewhere. So it's
I'm angry you won't let me off the hook.
I know.
I was just frustrated. Now I'm angry you're not going to let this go.
Yeah. And people, and sometimes when you first have this conversation with someone, they might say, well, hang on, what are your thoughts? And you can say, I will get to that. I will, honestly, when you've answered all the questions that I have, if I can think of something in addition that would be wise or helpful, I'll offer it to you. But what most of us have experienced, and I have been guilty of doing this myself. If somebody says, oh, my family and I are going to go to Hawaii on a vacation. Oh, I love Hawaii. I like to go to Maui. My favorite thing to do in Maui is blah, 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 blah. We've just taken the whole conversation away. Or someone says, this is a problem I'm dealing with in my organization. Oh, yeah, I've seen that one before. Let me give you some ideas about that. We don't even know yet if that's the real issue. There's a whole story in the book about Beowulf where he fights and defeats Grendel, and then Grendel's mother shows up. and she's bigger and badder than he ever was. And so maybe we're tackling Grindel, but does he have a mother that we need to know about, who's out there ready to tear off our arm and beat us over the head with a bloody end of it, like people used to say in the South when I was growing up. So we're not going to get at those things, and we're not going to get at the emotions connected with those things unless we stop advising. And besides, one of the things that's terrible about advising is that's a heavy load. And what if your advice is not very good? What if it's the wrong advice? What if somebody takes your advice and it blows up on them? I just don't want to carry that load. I want to be the place where someone can have a deep conversation. We're each a place. We're a physical place. We're an emotional, intellectual place where conversations occur. So I want to be that place where you can put anything, any topic into the conversation and I won't run away.
Right. I have to admit, when I was reading this section of the book, at one point I had myself laid on the couch, and you were the psychologist, and you're, well, how does that make you feel? And how do you weren't going to let me off the couch?
A slight correction. I don't ever say, how does that make you feel? Because I think nothing makes us feel. Right. I always say, what do you feel? Right. What do you feel? It's just a little tiny twist, but to me, it makes a difference.
I'm still on the couch though, wanting to get up, and you're not letting me. So.
Well, call me later, Clint. I'll get you off that.
No, it's all good.
I'll get you off the couch.
It's a little bit off topic, but I interviewed last year Allison Wood Brooks from Harvard Business School, who actually does research on conversation, and she has a term called boomer asking. And boomer asking is, I have this desire to make it all about me, so I ask you a question like, where are you going on vacation? And you say Hawaii, and then I run. It's all about me now. Yeah. I went to Hawaii and it was really great. And so we always try to say in conversations, don't boomer ask and listen.
That is a great term. I just wrote that down because I want to remember it. I love it.
Well, speaking of great terms, you use one called radical transparency. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
Well, in fact, there's a TEDx talk that I hope people will watch
which is awesome, by the way. People should definitely watch it.
Yeah, and it's funny in places. I think you'll have a giggle. Radical transparency it's that disclosing what we are really thinking and feeling. It is being totally authentic, and often, people love to use the word authentic, but authenticity is not something we have. It's something we choose. And people can give you lots of good reasons why, I'm not going to say that. George said something like that 2 weeks ago, and I sure miss him. I'm not going there. That won't fly. And so when we don't disclose what we're really thinking and feeling, we are being of no help. And yet it's the leader that often makes sure we don't, because of the way he or she responds on the rare occasion that we dip a toe in the water. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard a leader say, I really want to know what you're thinking. Be honest with me. This is going to be really great, really important. And as soon as somebody screws their courage to the sticking place, as Shakespeare would say, and says something like, okay, well, you asked, I'm thinking that maybe we should blah, 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 blah. And the leader says, yeah, I hear you, and it's over. Because when a leader says that, the leader is communicating, yeah, I'm not really asking, or you're wrong, or I guess you haven't yet grasped the brilliance of my thinking. Let me repeat myself. Who's wonderful at meetings like this is Robert Redford, the actor. Who knew? I mean, he depending on the topic, he will invite quite a motley crew into the room, not just the usual suspects, but whose perspective would be useful. And he says, he kicks off his meeting saying, I'm going to tell you what I think and why I think it. And if I had to make a decision today without your input, I'm going to tell you what decision I would make and why. Now, your value here is to tell me what I'm missing, push back. And what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? What would you suggest that I haven't thought of? And if we get this right, I will be different when this conversation is over. I've never heard another leader say anything like that. I will be different when this conversation is over. I am inviting you to influence me.
Right. I love that when I read that in the book, by the way. I underlined that one. That was awesome.
I think a lot of us, understandably, doesn't make us a bad person, but our goal is to go in and influence others. And it's not a two-way thing. We can fool ourselves in thinking, look, I've got this title, I must be pretty hot stuff. I must know stuff. I've got a lot of answers. I have all this experience. So, and the company is counting on me to have the answers and to make things happen. Well, yes. And how are you going to do that?
Right.
Remember, your aim is not to be right. Your aim is to get it right. And you can't, nobody can be in all the places at one time. I remember when, can't remember his name.
Jack Welch.
Right out. Yeah, Jack Welch. When they bought a manufacturing company, and he called a big meeting in their huge warehouse. And there's 1,000 people in this warehouse crowded in before COVID. And he said, we've got some problems to solve, and one of our biggest problems that we need to solve is this. And so I want you all to know that I'd love to hear your suggestions about what we need to do. Well, way in the back, a guy wearing a pair of overalls waved his arm. And so Jack Welch said, okay, great. Give him a mic. And they passed the mic back and back and back and back. And this guy said, Mr. Welch, all these years, they've been paying for our hands when they could have had our heads for free.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
I love that. And that's it. People come into an organization wanting to help, wanting to contribute, wanting to bring everything they are, everything they hope to become in the door with them and be helpful. And we make them very small. We teach them pretty quickly that all that they are and all that they have to give is not welcome. It would wreck the curve. And what happens is they begin to absent their spirit from the work, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's funny when I teach classes, one of the things that people are often bringing up is how do you deal with the terrible teammate who's, seems to come in and want to do no work. And I got to tell you, in my 30 plus year career, I've yet to meet this person. I know they exist, but I find most people when they come into work, they want to do a good job and feel good about themselves and earn the money that they take home.
That's my experience too. And I think I don't know who said this, but somebody said, hire slowly, fire quickly.
Right.
So take your time hiring. But if you do get somebody like that, hey, say goodbye, get it over with.
Oh, you got a great term you use in the book all the time, make available to industry. I love that.
Yes. Yes, I'm going to make you available to industry.
So I really enjoyed the story of Beth, the compulsive punctual that had a nervous breakthrough, not breakdown, but breakthrough. And you said she showed up for herself. And I wondered, what do you mean by that when you say she showed up for herself?
Well, she said, all my life, I have been doing my best to project the image that I think other people desire. So, when I'm at work and I'm with one of my colleagues, I have that face. When my boss comes into the room, that's a different face. When I'm talking with a customer, we call it customer facing, which is a term I'm not crazy about, but we call it customer facing. That's a different face. When I go home to my family, that's a different face. When I'm out in the community and I meet my priest, my rabbi, my pastor, that's a very special face. And she said, one morning I woke up unrecognizable to myself. And she realized that I have sort of given away so many pieces of myself. I don't even remember who I wanted to be when I was young, and all of the possibilities seemed so vast and so wonderful. I've accommodated many, many people to the point where I'm resentful, if I could be honest about it. I'm not a happy camper. So I need to get my own life on track. I need to be happy. I need to care more about what I think of me than what other people think of me.
Right.
And it was great. It was wonderful lesson for all of us, a great reminder for all of us, because in the workplace, I'm not interested in the person who sounds like everybody else or who tries to fit in like everybody else. I'm much more interested in the unique human being that they are, because there's no other person like them. They're it. And so that's the person I want to hang out with. That's the person I want to learn from, link arms with, see what we can do together. Not somebody who's trying to be what they think I want them to be.
Right. I love that. And I remember in the story, everybody, I guess, was just so quiet, and she goes, "It's okay, y'all. I just had a nervous breakthrough," which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, we all just sat there kind of stunned. We all just like, what? And then she said, "Okay, y'all, it's all right. I'm having a breakthrough."
Yeah, exactly. So another principle you lay out in the book is be here, prepared to be nowhere else. And I have to tell you, I really appreciated that, because when someone asks me how they can be a better conversationalist, I always lead with two things. First, I tell them they need to be in the moment. Put down your cell phone or any other distractions, look the other party in the eye, and listen. And second, listen more than you talk. And I had a boss once that would call me into his office, and I lived about 30 miles from where his office was, and I'd drive in, and as soon as I'd get there, I'd walk in, and he'd welcome me in his office, and he would turn away from me and start playing Minesweeper on his computer while he talked to me. So he wasn't looking at me. He was looking a different direction. I just always left those meetings feeling so disrespected of both my time, but also the fact that he wouldn't even acknowledge, other than he's talking to me, I'm there, but he's playing Minesweeper. And it just felt so disrespectful. So this one really resonated about being in the moment.
I'll tell you a funny story. It's a little risque, but there was a CEO who wanted to join one of my groups. And I went to meet him in his office, and he just started talking. I walk in the door, and he just started talking for quite a long time. And eventually I said, hey, hang on a second. Conversation comes from the Latin conversare. It means an exchange of ideas and sentiments. It starts with con. In Spanish, con means with. It's being with someone. We're not having a conversation. We're just having a versation. And he said, oh, my wife says that all the time. And he kept right on talking and talking and talking. And I stood up and I went to the door of his office. And he said, where are you going? And I said, I'm leaving. You remind me of someone from my past who had a style of lovemaking that did not require my presence. And he said, what? I said, tell you what, I'm going to take a walk around your company, say hello to people, and when I come back, I'm going to ask you what's the most important thing we should be talking about. And then I want to have a conversation with you. And when I came back, he said, I think my wife is going to divorce me. And he was right. She did. And who could blame her?
Right.
So he couldn't have a conversation if his life depended on it. He got better because I worked with him to get better. We created a little secret sign that only he and I knew that I would make for him when I was really saying, shut up. You talked enough.
Well, there was a saying that I always thought was a Southern saying, but I've talked to people up north who say it's there too, and that is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in that ratio.
That's
and
right.
It's hard to have a conversation if one person's doing all the versing, as you said.
That's right.
Another one that you mentioned quite a few times in the book that I think it's important to touch on is this idea behind a stump speech. So what exactly is that, and why do you recommend people write one for themselves?
Oh, one of the most important things for me is to have clarity about my purpose. Why am I here? And it's a question that I like to ask other people too. What do you see as your purpose on this planet, this go round? Whether it's the only one or whether we get lots of them, this go around, what do you think you're here to do? And
the older I get, the more I hope it's more go rounds.
Yeah, I do too. Believe me, I actually want to come back as one of my dogs. Yeah,
I understand that, really.
Yeah. So I often go into a company and help them clarify, why do we exist? From the customer's point of view, what is it that we do for our customer that matters to them? But the stump speech is, where am I going? Where am I going? And why, by the way, am I going there? And the why usually means that's my purpose because here's what I believe. And then, okay, I know where I'm going. I know why I'm going there. Who's going with me? So what kinds of people do I want to bring into my life in maybe a big way? And that tells me the qualities that I'm looking for in people who are going to become my colleagues, my clients, my friends, whatever. And then finally, how am I going to get there? So what are the most important things for me to do to be true to my purpose and to move in the direction I've said I want to go in? And I think that is extremely useful. And it requires some time. This is a big conversation with self. Every year, well, I didn't get to do it this year, but most years I go take a long, long walk in some beautiful place by myself, like the Yorkshire Dales or the Swiss Alps or whatever. And that's a conversation with self. And I always review, okay, does this still fit me? And I sometimes will ask people who know me, am I on track? Do you see me getting off? I mean, am I doing the things that fit with what I have said is my purpose? So if you can't get away for days, at least give yourself several hours to just sit quietly and think about, where am I going? Why am I going there? Who's going with me? How am I going to get there? Powerful questions.
Yeah, I think definitely worth the time that you need to carve out. So I heard you say in one of your talks that whatever dysfunctions an organization has will be amplified in a world where we are all working remotely. And I was wondering how we could avoid that dysfunction.
Well, I don't know that we can, honestly. I mean, I hate to say that, but for example, on a personal level, a lot of couples are, they have this enforced time together. They are quarantined in the same house. And everything is amplified, accelerated. All the things that are great about the relationship are right there on full display. And all of the things that aren't so great are right there. And there's no escaping. And some couples are really struggling. I mean, there are going to be some breakups. And then some people are saying, I know I'm more in love with my partner than I ever was before. But in the workplace, it's a challenge because if we are remote, we can't see what somebody's doing. We don't know what they're actually working on. We can see the results they're producing. And if we've been really clear about the results and the timeline and everything, and they're meeting those results, that is a great thing. But if they're not, then we need to have that conversation with them. I absolutely hold you able to deliver on your deliverables, and it isn't happening. So what's going on?
Right.
And we just need to ask, what's going on? Our approach to feedback, I love it. And if I forget to use it, I always create a mess. When I do use it, it's a beautiful thing. So it's not going in and saying, you, I'm upset, I'm worried, I'm unhappy. It's to say, this is what I'm observing. This is what I saw, this is what I heard. Can you tell me what's going on? I remember walking through the office when we were all in the office and hearing one of our salespeople shouting into the phone. And I knew he was talking to a client of ours. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And so when he got off the phone, I said, okay, I just heard you yelling at a client. Can you tell me what was going on? And he said, yeah, she has a hearing problem. She keeps saying, can you talk louder? Talk louder. I can't hear you. And she won't wear a hearing aid, and I don't dare bring it up. I tried once, and she got very incensed. And he and I were laughing. So, if I had just started in with, I heard you yelling at a client, and that's not okay. We would never do that, blah, 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 blah. Well, shame on me. So we have taken the curse off of feedback by saying, look, stay current. Don't give anonymous feedback. Don't only give it like twice a year. Stay current. Give it, including praise, appreciation, gratitude. That's feedback as well. Being very specific about what it is that you observed or experienced that blew you away. But always when it's something that seems negative to you, always say, here's what I observed. Can you tell me what's going on? And that gives them an opportunity to say to themselves what you would have said to them.
Right. Yeah, my friend Craig Dowden, who wrote Do Good to Lead Well, he likes to talk about one of the ways he'll let people off the hook is he'll say, well, what do you think other people think I can improve on?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I think. I'll blame others for it. I like that.
Yeah, I like it.
So there's so much more we could talk about in Fierce Conversations, but I really want to finish up by spending a few minutes talking about your new book, Fierce Love. So when is it coming out?
Oh, I'm not sure. I just finished, as in yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Writing it. And now I'm going to go up to my treehouse on Orcas Island and spend a week editing, which means I have to kill all my darlings and take out all the stuff that's not good, and make it better. But I'm very excited about it because, Clint, I have gotten so many emails. In fact, I just got one this morning from people who say, I love Fierce Conversations, love, love, love it, learn so much, I'm using it, and I'm having much better conversations at home, with my partner, with my spouse. And I want more. I want more. So this book, Fierce Love, making love every day, one conversation at a time, because love doesn't make itself. We make it, or we fail to make it, and we unmake it as well. It's not like God is up there ex-machining everything that happens in our lives. Certainly not the amount of love we have. So we make it, and it can seem complicated, but it really isn't. It is all about the conversations. The conversation is the relationship. And so the book busts some popular myths about love that have gotten us into all kinds of trouble and outlines 8 conversations. 7 are conversations I really want couples to have. And the 8th one is if you are now seriously envisioning a life that does not include your partner.
Right.
Here's your one last hurrah to try to maybe turn things around or exit.
Right. So it sounds like that's the inspiration for the book. And I guess the premise is building off of the fierce conversation kind of backbone.
It is, Clint. It's the same thing, what gets talked about in a relationship and how it gets talked about determines what's going to happen. We're either having conversations that enrich our relationships or that flatline or harm it. And so we don't know how to have it. So the book is very clear. It's almost like a workbook in that it has, here's this conversation. This is what it's about. This is why it's really useful. And here's what you might say. So it gives a pretend script that somebody can use. And then I'm just hoping that they will go and have that conversation with their partner.
I think I listened to a talk about this earlier and that you gave, and I think I'm getting it right, but you talked about the fact that in a relationship when you're first starting out, you're asking all these great questions, you're having all these deep conversations, and I certainly remember those. Oh, I can't believe I talked for 4 hours, and then all of a sudden the relationship progresses and those conversations get shorter and shorter and more surface.
I think we fall into a routine, once we've committed to one another, whether we got married or moved in or whatever it is. Okay, now we're into how do we live together? How do we make things work? What about the kids? What about who's going to feed the dog? Who's going to blah, blah, blah. And sometimes people will say about their partner that, he or she is my home. That person feels like home to me. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. But think about our homes. We redecorate every once in a while. We move the furniture. Our tastes change. People change and forget to tell one another. And so, our homes need maintenance, and so do our relationships. And this is not a hard or a difficult or a sad or a scary conversation. It's just, how are we doing really? I mean, where are we right now? And are we good? And there's a bunch of questions, to ask one another and things to say that really help where you are. One of the things that I've seen happen several times to friends of mine, women friends, is they've gotten a sort of a love letter from their husband or their partner saying, I love you so much and our relationship, blah, 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 blah. And then very shortly thereafter, the man asks for a divorce. What he was actually doing was he was trying to manifest what he wanted. He was trying to affirm what he wanted, but when he realized, it's not there. And it's such a shock to the woman. But I thought you were happy. I thought you loved me. I thought everything was good between us. And we didn't have that conversation that got below the surface. So sometimes I liken a fierce conversation to scuba diving. Growing up in Tennessee, I hung out with my grandparents on the lake and water skied. And water skiing was lots of fun. You can get a tan. It's a kick. But when you put on a tank or even just a mask and you go beneath the surface, that is a whole different world. And so I always tell clients, we're going to scuba dive. We're going to go beneath the surface. We're going to see what's there and tackle it, celebrate it, tackle it, whatever.
Well, now you're definitely speaking my language because scuba diving is my passion. I have over 400 dives.
Really?
I'd love to scuba dive. So yeah, that's.
Oh.
I'm not talking to you. That's where I want to be, is scuba diving. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Where's your favorite place?
I love going to Cozumel because of the drift diving there. That's a lot of fun. I did a 7-day live aboard on the Great Barrier Reef, which was a lot of fun.
Wow.
And I also love going to Curacao for all the shore diving. So,
Oh, how wonderful. That sounds great.
It is amazing. I mean, and when I dive, I do 5 dives a day. I'm underwater about 5 hours. And people say, where's you relax? It's that you don't get it. That is the relaxation. Like conversation is a relationship. Scuba diving is the relaxation, right? That's my method.
Yeah. And for me, just time in nature is where I have my great conversations with self and with the world around me. I mean, I take my dogs, we head into the woods or we head up a mountain and beautiful things happen.
Well, I notice you in the book, you talk about walking through the Cotswolds and all the places and stopping to get out. Now I Want a Black Sheep, I think is what you called it, was the one drink that you really enjoyed in the pub.
Yeah. That was in the Yorkshire Dales. I walked into the pub and said, I need something really cold and strong. And one of the patrons said, give her a black sheep. And they gave it to me and it was just heaven.
That's awesome. Well, it's been really, really enjoyable. If someone wants to learn more about you or buy your books and learn what soft eyes have to do with studying karate in Japan, or read about the breakthrough you had with John, the Russian commercial fishing fleet owner, how can they do so?
Yeah. Well, Fierce Conversations is sold everywhere, whether they, anywhere that they buy books, they'll find Fierce Conversations. Right. And then our website is fierceinc.com, INC, fierceinc.com. And that is where they can find out what is it that we do and how do we do it. And I have to say, we are doing some really cool things. We're doing some 3D simulations. We are doing a lot of asynchronous trainings, which means somebody can take a workshop on their own anytime they want to without a facilitator. So we've really used this COVID period to innovate like mad, and I'm very proud of us.
Well, that's awesome. Susan, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Thank you. It was a genuine pleasure.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett. To find out more about Clint, go to projectsuccess.com or pick up Clint's book, The Project Success Method, at Amazon.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.